Welcome to the Aquarian Shaman broadcast. I'm Star Wolf, your shamanic host, and I'm here to teach you how to transform yourself and transform the world. Twice a month, we'll be exploring how to develop shamanic psycho-spiritual practices to support transformation while expanding your energy field in a way that can also support others. Each episode offers dynamic experiential guidance and teachings on how to safely enter a natural altered state of consciousness using the sacred breath. Additionally, we will discuss the importance of integration and grounding this medicine into your everyday life. Stay tuned. We're about to create authentic embodied change that will surely grow corn for the future generations. Welcome everyone to Transformation Network and also to Aquarian Shaman. So I'd like to start off like I always do with burning a little bit of sage. And if you've been watching us at all, you know that I've talked about it quite a bit, that to burn some herbs, especially things like sage, helps to create the ceremonial space, a sacred place, for us to just open our hearts and our minds and to drop into who it is we really are. And for those of us who are really seeking to embody the shaman within, the healer within, the teacher within, the guide that guides us, and that also many of us are in roles where we are supporting other people at this time, that being in ceremonial space can be a very sacred thing that you do with your clients, with your students, with your friends, with your family, and with the world. So the sage is burned to release any negativity. And if you've been watching a lot of politics, and I get caught up in it myself, perhaps I need a little extra smudging today and send it out there in the world. Yeah. And sometimes people tell me that when I light the sage that they light their own as well, which is nice. You can do that on your own as well. And just to, however you pray, doesn't matter, as long as you just pray for the good things, for all of us, for all of humans, for our earth. We pray for the highest good. Today I have used the beautiful swan feathers that came from a swan that met its natural demise out in Iceland a long time ago. And then one of my graduate students created this beautiful fan and sent it to me. And the swan represents surrender. And many of you heard me talk about Grandmother Twyla and the Wolf Clan, and a lot of her teaching has to do with animal medicine. In fact, the medicine cards became so popular all over the world by Jamie Sams, who was one of Grandmother Twyla's initiates that she taught, as well as myself, that she taught her about the creature teachers. And in that book, in the medicine card book, and in Grandmother Twyla's world, the swan means surrender. So that's a very appropriate, if you will, energy that I want to bring into this interview today. And some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that I have a very special guest on today. All my guests are special, but I have to say, to me, this is the most special, because Nikólaus is very dear and near to my heart. We've been very close for a long time. We've known each other for a long time. And I'm going to read you about him and his bio. But the first thing I want to say to you, that this beautiful person sitting in front of you, Nikólaus Star Wolf, is also my mate, my soulmate, and my husband, and my work partner. And we work together every day to bring Aquarian shaman energy to the world, shamanic breathwork to the world, and to just try to be our best to be good human beings. So, yeah, I'm going to read you his, some of his information here. So some of this is in his words, okay? Having journeyed deep into the underworld at an early age, Nikólaus learned to rely upon the wisdom of his heart to direct and guide him. In 2010, His inner wisdom guided him to Venus Rising Association for Transformation, where he connected with the late Bradford Clark Collins, who was the co-director of Venus Rising and of Isis Cove Retreat Center. As Brad's direct apprentice, Nikólaus learned to engage with people's souls and hearts and created sacred space for healing and transformation. Brad continued to serve as Nico's mentor for the remainder of his life, and he passed in 2014. He passed on his medicine about shamanic leadership and soul work to Nikólaus. Today, Nikólaus now serves as the co-director of Venus Rising Association for Transformation alongside his wife, Linda Starwolf. He is a creative Renaissance man, and I can vouch for that, who operates on necessity and the art of improv. He brings his unique blend of wisdom and practical skills to everything. He holds a master's degree in shamanic psychospiritual studies from Venus Rising University and a master shamanic breathwork practitioner, having trained extensively in this transformational healing. As co-director, boy, he has so much that he does there. But it's important to acknowledge Nikólaus because he manages Venus Rising's business operations, organization, facilitating shamanic breathwork trainings, retreats, mystery tours around the globe. And together, these are his words, with his beloved Starwolf, they have taken students to sacred sites across the globe, including Bali, South Africa, Mexico, Egypt, Peru, and more. An ordained shamanic minister and priest through Venus Rising Association, he has served as Transformation House staff, facilitated internships, mentored individuals to discover their holy purpose. His story is featured in Starwolf's book called Soul Whispering, The Art of Awakening Shamanic Consciousness, and he now resides in Western North Carolina on the land that remembered him. He continues his walk to the path of his heart, bridging mind, body, and heart, and soul, and spirit. And his message encourages others to live from their hearts, supporting them in following their dreams. Nico oversees and maintains the Venus Rising's elemental temples on Dove Mountain and the sacred spaces so that they may continue to serve for healing and awakening. He remains dedicated to serving the planet and awakening shamanic consciousness in others as he stays true to and follows his own soul path. Now that's a mouthful, and that's a lot. And at the same time, there is nothing that really could be left out in order to grasp the fullness of who Nikólaus Starwolf is and is still becoming. And all the plates that he's juggling. And I'm so grateful because if he didn't, a lot of my plates would be crashing to the ground about now. So with that, I want to welcome you here, Nikólaus, and I know you're just across the hall in the other room with the dog, with our wolf dog. I'm going to welcome you, and I'm excited to have you on here today to share your medicine as an Aquarian shaman, and to just jump right in and to ask you if there's anything else that you would like to say about yourself, I mean, that was a lot, but is there anything that you would like to share about how you got here? You know, you told a lot of what happened after you got here, but perhaps you'd like to, start off and tell us a little bit more about what qualifies you to be an Aquarian shaman. What are I guess you could say the rituals, the ceremonies, the deaths and rebirths that you've been through. In other words, how did your spiral path lead you here?
Thank you, Starwolf. This is a long time in coming, being in this interview with you. And I'm feeling very open and excited right now because everything you read through with my bio and the journey that I've been through to be where I am now, I feel like I'm really just at the beginning again, and that there's a whole nother journey that's looking to open up ahead of us. And so before we go there, I'll start with I was born. And as you like to joke about in circle, birth is one of the greatest initiations we can go through on this planet. And so for me, coming into this world, I was the third child. And very much like how we teach in family of origin in our trainings, I fell into the archetype of the lost child. My father wasn't really around much. My mother was trying to take care of me and my two sisters and also, living life and doing hers to do. And I somehow always ended up finding a way to slip through the cracks. And, I just lived in another world. And for me, that caused a lot of pain. It caused a lot of harm that made me uncomfortable and made me want to seek something out. And so along with that pain, there was also a sense that there was something more for me in this life than living a life of those I saw living around me. I knew that I wasn't drawn to the typical going to school, having children, raising a family, having a 9-to-5 job. The traditional way of things just, it never really sat right for me. It never called to me. And so there was this way in which I felt like I stuck out and I didn't fit in, and I knew I wanted something more, but I didn't know what that was. And so as I navigated through life and as things became increasingly more difficult for me, where I had less and less support as I entered into my teenage years, I know a lot of your story where you had drug, sex, and rock and roll. Well, I didn't really have the sex and I didn't have the rock and roll, but I had the drugs. And so I found myself going on these self-induced journeys. And I didn't know to call it that at the time, but I knew that, whenever I was intoxicated, something would open up within me and around me. And I would have these experiences that other people around me didn't have. I realized that I was going through, these other realities that when I came back to this reality and, we were sharing our stories, they didn't have those experiences and they didn't really know what to make of my experiences. I didn't know what to make of my experiences. But I did know that there was a truth in them that felt more real than the life that I was living and the reality that I was anchored in at that time. And so that really set the foundation for me to leave everything I knew behind and to surrender into something greater. You opened up with the swan fan and with spirit going into surrender. And that's very much been my journey from the beginning, is surrendering again and again. And one of the greatest surrenders for me was actually stepping away from the drugs, stepping away from, for me, it was medicine at the time. I truly believe that if I hadn't had what I had when I needed it, I would not have survived to a place to where I could let it go. And so when I turned 20, everything happened at once. I was able to step into sobriety and let go of these induced altered states that I was relying on to survive. And I had a glimmer of hope. And ironically, that glimmer of hope came as one of your books, the Shamanic Breathwork book. And when I was reading that book among some other books, I had this sensation that kept shooting up my spine. It was actually quite painful, to where I would lock up. My whole body would freeze. I'd go rigid. And this electrical shock would just explode as I was reading your words. And what I've come to really believe and to sit into is that it wasn't necessarily the book that was having this effect on me so much as a connection I was feeling with you. And in a way, it was like, hello, another myself. Like, yes, this is true for me too. This is something that I've been looking to be understood in, and nobody around me could quite see me or understand what I was experiencing. So in reading your words, I got to feel that you could. And not only were you understanding of it, but you were opening up a pathway of where I could go in my journey of seeking something greater than what it is I had and what I knew.
So you have a great story that you have shared with me about what was happening on the day that you found the book And there's synchronicities around that about going into the store. Would you like to tell a little bit more about that and briefly before you move on?
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah, I
magical.
remember at this time I'd taken a leap of faith where I had graduated high school and I was going to try the college thing. I knew it wasn't for me, but I was just going to try it. So I got all my ducks lined up. I got accepted into this college. And right as I was about ready to start attending, the fella that my mother and I were staying with, the relationship ended and we were catapulted out of that life and into my grandmother's house. And so while I was living in my grandmother's house, I really was just completely lost on direction. And during this time, I had about, I'd had like maybe $20 that I would go and I'd live off of at the gas station. I'd get a couple hot dogs and a big slurp or whatever. And this one day I found a metaphysical bookstore in downtown near where I was staying. And I walked in and I remember just kind of scrolling through the books and I came across the shamanic breathwork book. And again, I just knew there was a knowing in me that I wanted to explore more of what was in this book. And so I took the $20 I had for the week and I bought that book and I went to the park and I was reading it. And after reading it for a little while, I went into meditation. And I remember at some point when I was coming out of the meditation, I could smell marijuana. And so I opened my eyes and there's a guy on a bench right behind me smoking. And so I just get up and I go and I sit with them and we start talking about Pink Floyd and the dream within the dream. And there was something that just ignited in me that I had this need. And I will never forget just standing up from the bench and I took off running to get to where I was staying at my grandma's house and to get my little iPhone. And I just randomly typed up an email to Starwolf, to you, off of my phone and I hit send. And of course, I didn't have any expectations from writing that message. It was more of a Hail Mary. One of the things that says it in my bio is I operate on necessity. And that's very much been the case in my life where I just, create based on need. And that email was one of those things where I'd made the decision that my 20th birthday was coming up. And when I turned 20, I was going to just pack up my backpack and I was going to start hitchhiking to California. And I had no reason to go to California other than I just needed to get out of Missouri. And that was the place I thought maybe I could find a new way of life. And so in sending that email to you, I really didn't put any stock in it. It was just a random thing. But lo and behold, Brad called me. And at this time, Brad Collins was your husband, was Starwolf's husband. And he called me and he said, hi, Starwolf got your email and she asked me to reach out to you. And it felt surreal at this moment, being on the phone with Brad. And he was asking me about my plans, what I was looking to do. And I said, well, Brad, I really have no idea. This is how I feel. It's clear that I'm a plant who's overgrown its container and that my soul is dying and that I have to do something. And I don't know what to do. So this is what I'm currently planning on. And I said, I'm doing my best to learn how to follow the omens, how to read omens. And this is what I'm doing. And he said, well, if you have any interest in coming out to North Carolina, really the opposite direction that you're planning on going, we might have an internship available for you. And I was like, North Carolina, it doesn't really hold anything in my psyche. I'm not sure. Let me feel into it and think about it. And he's like, oh, and by the way, we actually share the same birthday. And that really perked my ears up. That's like, whoa, okay. That was a synchronicity that I was looking for. How curious.
Interject here for just a moment.
Yeah.
And just to fill in one little piece there is that many people wrote me and sent emails to me. And, you can imagine when you're an author, a lot of people and a teacher, a lot of people write you. And occasionally someone who was really calling out for help or something, I would write something to them or this or that or whatever. But when I got your letter, for whatever reason, I think you said something about your birth date because I was aware that your birth date was the same day, October 12th, the same time, same as Brad's. And there was something very synchronistic about that. And I said to Brad, call this man and see if he wants an internship here. And he said, why? Why are you just going to ask a complete stranger here? We don't do that. It's people that come through our classes or our groups or their friends, and they come here and we, allow them to have internships sometime, but we don't know this person from Adam. And I said, I don't know why, Brad, but I just feel this. So after he talked with you, he came back and he said, okay, I think he's going to come out. He said, I hope you know what we're getting into. I'm like, I'm just trusting it like everything else. So just to tell you, it's 5:20 already. So I want you to get to not only through this story, but to be sure that because there's a long story after that of where you've been and what you've been doing. So after you came out, what happened for you with Brad? Because I know he mentored you and what are some of the ways that he mentored you and supported you on your path over the years?
You started off introducing me and welcoming me as your soulmate. And I very much felt that connection with Brad as well. When I first came here and I met Brad, there was just a part of him that I knew instinctively. And so when I came to Isis Cove, I came to live. And, I worked with Brad every day. I was alongside him on the grounds, which wasn't my favorite, but he made it endurable. I was with him in ceremony. I was with him in 12-step meetings. There was a way in which he was really soul whispering me in all of these different ways in life that I needed and that I didn't quite get as a young man without a father figure present in my life. And so there's a way in which Brad held a lot of different roles in my life. He became a really good friend. He was holding a father essence for me of teaching me things that I needed to know to navigate life and to better myself as a man. And he was also training me as an apprentice. And he opened the doors and opened the portals for me to step into the shamanic world more consciously. And I'll always be grateful to him for this, because the way that he brought me in, it opened something inside of myself that I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. And I didn't know what the future was going to look like, but at that point I could finally relax a little bit and step out of the survival that I'd been running on, because I knew somehow I'd gotten to where I needed to be and I was going to be taken care of. And that just continued to evolve, really. Over the year that I lived here at Isis Cove, I like to joke and say, really, Starwolf was the rock star. I didn't see Starwolf between sessions or when we were out of ceremony. And when ceremony would begin, she would come in with her glasses on, her cape billowing behind her. She'd do this grand opening and entrance, get us all worked up and in process. And then, bam, out the door she goes, her cape flowing behind her. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it really, you do have such a profound effect of how you enter into a space and then how you would leave. And other than those times, I had some meals with you, Starwolf, but really Brad was my main connection here. And I'm so grateful that it was the way it was, because I was able to receive his heart and to receive his medicine, not just metaphysically, but also when it became clear it was time for me to leave and to go on a vision quest to see, like, what now? What do I do with everything that I had experienced on the mountain? How do I integrate this? Brad actually passed me his medicine pipe. And so when I went on my walkabout, I had his pipe to carry with me and to initiate ceremony as I journeyed into the unknown once again.
Beautiful. And you became a shamanic breathwork facilitator, a shamanic minister, and you knew this land here firsthand from him, and where every creek was and every tree and all the sacred spaces here. So you were truly his protege, in that way, your protege, and that there's no one that he passed that energy to as deeply as he did you. He worked with many, many people, but he really did carry that towards you and trusted you to carry it forward yourself. And in some ways, at that time we had no idea he had cancer, but it feels to me that at some level, maybe unconsciously, he knew at some level that he was going to be leaving, and that there was a way in which he wanted to download all that he could. And I don't think this was at all because he wasn't sick at the time or anything, but it feels like at some level that it was a higher power thing, that you came here, that I wrote to you, that I said, let him come, that you both had the same birthday, years apart, but still October 12th, you were both Libras. You came here, you and I didn't have that, I was as you said, the archetypal energy as far as that sort of thing. But Brad was much more personal with you in that way, and caring, really holding you in that. So that when he, came into the awareness that he had cancer, and then he was beginning to leave, there was such a big initiation for all of us, all the people that knew and loved Brad. And I know that it was very deep for you because he was that anchor for you, that grounding cord for you, that had provided a lot of the things that you had not gotten from other people, And so can you come a little bit further with that now, and so we can move more into in just a few minutes to the place of what you're doing today. But let's bring more that story of like when Brad got sick and when you came back afterwards, that sort of thing. Let's go there.
Yeah, as you were sharing, for me, it feels like how things have unfolded. There's no other way to explain it other it's been written in the stars. And it was written long before I even got here. Because the synchronicities, how things lined up, I have to just say that my uncle who lives in Asheville made it possible for me to even accept the internship. That was a synchronicity of itself. All of these things fell in place so perfectly that, as Brad, famously would be quoted on, you can't make this shit up.
Right.
And you really can't. And so for me, of course, Brad had this trickster element to him that I also dearly love. And when I started working with him, he could see where my rough edges were, where I avoided things, specifically with being in my body, working on the earth, things that I really did not like. And so it's ironic for me, though, because he would find ways to invite me into that work and invite me into myself in that way, so that towards the end of my walkabout, when it was announced that Brad had cancer, I was again coming to a place where I was in heartbreak, things were dissolving around me, and I was feeling untethered. And I know a lot of that was because I was feeling into what happens if Brad leaves, this one anchor in my life, as you were talking about, Starwolf, in this way. And so I had journeyed back to Isis Cove in the very early stages of his cancer, where he wasn't really ill yet, like he wasn't feeling really ill. And, we were connecting, and I really wanted to be here and to show up for him. And I wasn't really sure the best way to do that. And I remember for him that he was really more internal at that point, that all that he really could say that he needed from me was to work the land. And I just remember that was so difficult for me because I love you, Brad. And I feel like there's something else that I need to be in a different place right now. I'm in this heartbreak, and there's something else going on for me. And that's just not where I'm at the moment. And so I remember that was one of the hardest dynamics of our relationship, when I actually had to say, this isn't right for me right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave again. However, if you guys really need me, let me know. And if there's something I can do to support you on this journey. And so again, I'd left, but then I stayed in touch. And when Brad passed, I was actually here. I was master apprenticing in a ship training program. And I'll never forget, I was sitting at the pond that we used to have, and Starwolf and Brad drove past me on the way to the hospital. And I remember making eye contact through the vehicle, and Brad passed later that evening. And that really did something for me, not just in a devastating, heartbreaking way, but it woke something up in me as well. there was this timing piece that said, okay, something is now, it's time to be activated. And so after that, over the coming months, I stayed in touch with you, Starwolf. And, once again, I was in the unknown. I wasn't sure where I was going, what I was doing. I remember being here for the memorial with Brad and just letting all of that energy happen. And that's actually when I first got to go into ceremony with you, Starwolf. I remember I had really long hippie hair, and Brad had passed his flute on to me. And so for his memorial, you and I were on stage, and I played his flute as you were doing an invocation.
Just an
and that was
to say that Brad's memorial was epic. It was like a rock star. Everybody came from all around the world, and it covered the mountain, and we had a huge tent, and we had a stage, and we had a band, and the ceremonies for Brad started at 9 or 10 in the morning and went till midnight, all day long. It was really powerful. And I think you and I were, except for the dance afterwards, I think we were the last thing that I said to Nikólaus, will you bring Brad's pipe and, his flute and play the music, and I'll do a journey about Brad moving on and that sort of thing. And I didn't know what I was going to say or what, you and I just came together. We stood up on the stage together, and you played Brad's flute, and you sounded just like him when you played that flute. And I did the journey about Brad is going, in the sunset now. He's following, the sun that's setting. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the crowd. It was really beautiful. And it was really, really important because in that moment, that was a few months after he had passed, like about 3 months after. And it was really important because at that moment, I felt that I was really releasing him and letting him go, because there was a part of me that was really still trying to energetically hold him there. And so at that moment, I began to go deeper into, he's gone. He'll always be in my heart. He'll always be in our hearts. And he's a spirit guide and helper, but he has left. And so that was very important. So you were really important to Brad in the way that you were with him on the land and things. And you were really important in his memorial. And you were also really important in offering that loving support to me as well. So there's an interesting triad there that happened. And it's hard to explain to anyone, just even hearing this. You had to have been there. That's all I could say. So I'm going to come back to you now, and let's move on into what happened after that for you, and how did you end up back here now and in the position you're in now?
Oh, a miracle, really. It was quite fortunate that I found myself to be in a spiritual emergency, that mentally, emotionally, and physically, my body started breaking down on me. I even checked myself into a psych ward for a couple of days because I was seeking a container. I was seeking support, because in our shamanic work, we talk about how the caterpillar has to have the chrysalis, a safe place to then dissolve. Well, I was in the dissolving state, but I did not have a safe place where I was at to do that. And so it was clear that I wasn't going to get what I needed from the medical world, so I left there. And I was actually looking to go traveling and find support in Thailand and Bali. And I stopped by Isis Cove to check in on you, Starwolf, before I went. And the day I got here, I woke up that morning to get here, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't put any weight on my left ankle. So I thought, okay, I'll get here. I'll go through a soul return workshop, and I'll do some breath work. I'll do some energy work and move it. It'll be no problem. Well, over the next 9 months, it got worse. And, I'll never forget too, Star, when I was staying the night, and you were really concerned about me leaving. And you said, why don't you stay the night in my living room next to the fire with Grandmother Twyla's blanket and really contemplate if you want to go, because there's space here if you'd like to stay for a while. And of course, it was an immediate, I knew I needed to stay. The dissolution had progressed so much that I don't think I would have survived had I left the mountain at that time. I was in such a vulnerable state in terms of whatever this transformation was that was taking over for me. And I really do feel that Brad's death was a big catalyst to this. So I ended up staying here and start off, I lived right next door to you in the room I'm in now. And it was just seamless. And we joke about it, but it's almost like a part of the apprenticeship with Brad was really like a part of him did know he was leaving, and that he taught me everything I needed to know to take care of the house, the grounds, and to take care of you. I was able to come into the house and, make shakes for you and get the fire going, take care of the dogs, take care of things. And so here, while I'm going more and more into this dissolution state, I also at the same time know exactly how to work with you to where I didn't feel that I was being invasive in any way. I was giving you the space you needed to grieve, but somehow we were meeting each other's needs in a perfect way. And for me, over time, as my foundation was more settled, as I started rooting here and my needs were taken care of, then I started shifting into looking at the bigger picture of what's going on? Where am I going? What do I want? And it was clear that what I wanted was everything that I'd studied with Brad and that I had experienced with you at his memorial, being on stage, playing the flute, being a part of ceremony with you. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be in purpose with this work, with the work that saved my life and gave me direction. I wanted to pass that on to others.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's, really the premise of the 12-step programs or any really heart-centered programs is that we teach best what we most need to learn and what we have learned. And that when we have that healing and transformation, the only way you can keep it is to give it away, is to share it with others. It can't get stagnant. You can't just tell, I've got this healing now and I'm just going to hoard it. There's a way, if you found your way through something, in our breathwork teachings and SHIP and everything that Venus Rising is about passing that onward so that people can pass it onward. So you really, it was a perfect timing for everything of your comings and goings here and the way things evolved over several years, that you were really in that space like nobody else. We had a lot of people around us and people on the land and this and that, but there was no one that knew the land that other than Brad and I, but you, and to understand Venus Rising in the way that you did, and to also understand me and, just the whole thing. So, for me at that time, I'll just say, I was just basically in a place of pulled myself back from the world and into a deep place of grief. And I really also used you, quite frankly, as someone to protect me from everybody else, because a lot of people wanted to be close to me, and I understood that. It was really kind and sweet, but I needed time to grieve. And one of the most beautiful things is that I would get up in the morning, there'd be a fire burning. You'd ask me if I wanted to get something to eat, things like that, or if we wanted to, watch something, benign, things like that, or read some poetry or something, and you were non-invasive, so that anything, if I just needed to go in my room and cry, or if I needed to sit by the fire quiet, there was a way, in some ways, like how we hold space in shamanic breathwork when somebody's breathing and we're a co-journeyer. I felt that you were really holding that space for me, and it was quite, how shall I say, a surprise, not that, because I'd seen you work with people and we trained you and that sort of thing, but to imagine you being in that space, being truly, really capably holding that space for me was kind of mind-blowing. I mean, blowing,
This is where we come into the juicy part of this story and the magic, really, because I didn't see it coming. Nobody on the mountain, nobody saw this coming. And as I can look back at it now, I can understand that if I take everything that I experienced with you and Brad, and really with Brad, that when I showed up here, it's like I was able to step into being the anchor for you and to help pull you back from the other side. I know that you'd gone with Brad to deliver him to the other side. And even though I was in such a unique, life transformative place for myself, it's when I was able to actually start showing up and holding space for you and anchoring whatever was to come.
That was beautiful, and then there was just a gradual I guess you could say, unveiling path that opened up between both of us that we didn't really talk about at the time. It's like, well, let's just get something
Well,
to eat.
what
Let's
was
just
there to talk about? We were so in the unknown, and
in the
there was
bubble.
such a magic around us, a bubble that for me, I didn't really even understand or know what was taking place, but I could feel it. And I knew enough to trust it and to surrender. And
Yeah,
from that's where everything in the next 10 years has come from.
right.
So I remember, Starwolf, one day you woke up and you said, let's get an RV. And I was like, you want to get an RV? She's like, yeah. I want to, go out and see all of my friends and students, those who knew me and loved me before I was with Brad. I need to do a soul return for myself. I thought, an RV. Okay. And I remember just looking on Craigslist at the time, and I found a really good deal. I said, well, here's a great deal. We went and looked at it, and you said, let's get it. Next thing I know, we're scheduling the Shamanic Magical Mystery Tour. And we have dates and events set up all around the United States. And we traveled in this RV. And the magic of that, the spontaneity of it, but
And
also,
I was just going
yeah.
to say the beautiful part of that too was we went to all the places where Brad had been too. And so we came, so people were so glad to see us, you and I, and to do breath work, and they could all see me and see that I was okay, that I was, I was coming back to life. This is several months after
Mhm.
Brad had passed, and to see that you were there, and people would say, I'm so glad that Nikólaus is with you and supporting you, and that you guys are doing this. And there was a way in which I felt that, it's like you said, that my soul came back to me because I had gone, really walked Brad home and was holding him when he passed and all of that. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we haven't
Mhm.
really gotten to, let's bring this part to a close and talk about where you are now. So if you want to kind of,
Ah,
and so we ran around the world with the magical mystery tours and the RV, and then flying to all these places we talked about earlier, and
mm.
taking the work, and what do you want to say from there to here?
For me, I remember all of this magic really cemented. It culminated in an experience where you were coming home from Hollyhock and you had just found this book called The Gene Keys. And you were messaging me about it. And at the same time you were messaging me, I was looking it up. And then I got an email saying that Venus Rising with the Gene Keys was going to be in Romania. And so there's stuff that showed up where all of a sudden, we had plane tickets to go to Romania. And we went there. I felt this strength come into my body that I'd been missing for months. And all of a sudden, I was able to start walking stronger, breathing better. And everything started shifting. And wouldn't you know it, when we were going through the gene keys, one of the really important aspects in my chart is to be an anchor. Wouldn't you know it, Star Wolf is to be a storyteller. And mine was really the root chakra. And I was like, oh, the root chakra. So over these past 10 years, I've found that my root chakra, that being an anchor, is one of my greatest gifts. I've been able to step into holding Venus rising on a physical way with all of the land and the buildings, with the business. I've been able to step in and be creating the events and taking care of the business and everything taking place on that, to receive Star Wolf's visions and to bring them into the earth realm, to implement them, to make them happen. And at the same time, I've been able to come into our trainings as a lead trainer and working directly with students and passing on all that I've received myself. One of the first classes that I took over teaching was body work. And for me, Brad was instrumental in how I learned body work, because I didn't grow up with much physical touch. But boy, he gave me some really good body work. And that's how I learned how to start teaching that for others. And so it's like all of my life experience came together. And, Starwolf, you continued to create the opportunity for me to get bigger and to step more and more into those aspects of you and of Brad that I knew I was born to be. And I knew I wanted to be for those around me and to pass on. And so simultaneous to growing in all of these areas, we realized we were in love. And like you said, we weren't really thinking about what was happening at the time. But I remember there was a point when we looked at each other and we both said, oh shit, what do we do with this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that pretty clearly. And it was, I thought, what I really thought is, I can't do this. The age gap is too big, and people won't understand, and they'll think this and think that and think this and think that. And I could hear my mother in my head saying, "What?" That sort of thing. But just to kind of speed that up, the reality is that we talked it through. We prayed about it. We meditated on it. We talked to some other people around it, that I trusted, and finally just had to say the heart knows what the heart knows. And I'll be honest with you, part of the joke for me is that in the past, I've had a bit of judgment. I try not to be judgmental about anything, but of older men with younger women. And that had been, like, oh, okay. And when I thought I was worried about, for me, there was part of my concern is, I don't want this to hurt my work. I don't want this to hurt my kids. I don't want this to hurt Brad's kids, and I don't want this to hurt anybody. And yet, if there's one thing I've learned in life, is that I have to be true to the truth. And the truth is there was nobody even close to who you were in my life and what you brought to my life, regardless of your age or experience. There was a way in which you seamlessly stepped into the role that you've been in. And it wasn't me teaching you about it. I mean, there were certain things I could tell you about, but the parts that you completely stepped into were either parts that, that you learned from Brad, or that, as far as doing breath work and things like that, you had learned from me, But there was a way that you just seemed to know what to do. There was...
I agree.
I don't know how else to explain it. But what I just kind of finished my part, and that is, once we did, say, okay, we're in love, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? We handled it in a really beautiful way with reaching out to everybody and speaking to people and hearing any of their feelings or thoughts and concerns and that sort of thing. And just to kind of finish that piece off for me is that was really important to me because I had all these family relationships and friends and students and stuff, and I didn't want to hurt them, and I didn't want to hurt the work that I spent my whole life doing. But like you, I had to put my heart and truth on the altar and say, if I don't do this, I'm actually out of integrity. Because the truth is the truth, whether you say it or not. So we finally just came out and said, here we are, world, and this is what it is. And from there to then, it's amazing how many people really have had no issue and no problem with it, or if they did, they got over it pretty quickly once they were with us. Okay, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, coming from the other side, I didn't really think about it in terms of age. The age didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was, am I going to be able to grow enough, get big enough and strong enough to really, truly hold you the way that I believed you deserved to be held? And I know that we journeyed with this for a while to see like what's real here. Is this just an energy that's coming and going, or is this actually here? Is this going to be something that we want to act on and live in our lives? And after a little while, it became clear that this was it. For me, it's like, okay, my work's cut out for me. I've got to learn as much as I can learn, grow as fast and as big as I can grow so that I could meet you. Because my dream was to really be able to meet you on all levels so that you had a true partner. That's what I wanted for me. That's what I wanted for you. And, more than the work, I value relationship. And that's what I wanted in my life. I wanted a true partner who knew all parts of me, who I could be completely myself with, and that we go into the work together, that we are supporting each other and our sacred purpose with the world. And so here, however it came to be, it was here. And it was clear that the opportunity was here. and I was all in,
Mm.
and I still am.
Me too, Nicholas. What a beautiful, profound journey that you have been on all this time, and these hopefully will have a much longer time. Who knows what you will become in the years to come. And I just appreciate who you are. I really, really am grateful. And I can't help but think that at some level that Brad is with us and that he called you in. And
No doubt.
and he's probably telling you how to handle me from time to time when you need some advice. But I want to come back to the Aquarian shaman that you are. Long before we met, the circumstances of your childhood, all those different kinds of things that you went through. Sometimes people don't realize that, it is the hardships. It is having, a mate that dies of cancer. It is, having some of the things that happened in your childhood and those kinds of things. It is sometimes those shamanic initiations, it's not just being in a sweat lodge or a breath work or all the different things we do or a fire walk or journeys around the world, that sometimes the biggest initiations are the initiations that human beings simply go through of heartbreak for one reason or another. And that's one of the things that Venus Rising it was founded upon heartbreak itself many, many years ago, over 30 years ago. And shamanic breath work and all the things that we do together. So the beautiful thing about heartbreak is it breaks your heart open. And if you're conscious and stay with the process and journey long enough, something beautiful comes back to you from that. And it blossoms and it can be even bigger.
Yeah.
From that, the bigger the heartbreak, if you do the inner work and if you stay open, the bigger the rebirth. And that's one of the most beautiful things that Aquarian shamans know, that they learn how to see the bigger story. So I want to ask you now in the last few minutes, if there's anything that you left unsaid that you really wanted to say, and if you have any sort of vision of the future.
For me, I'm probably as excited as I've been in life. Because as you talked about heartbreak and the process of letting go, that has foreshadowing of what's to come. And as many folks know, you and I are in this place now of looking at letting go of our home, letting go of the mountain, and potentially moving to Europe, moving abroad somewhere. And whoa, it's like you woke up again and you said, hey, let's get an RV. But this time it was, let's move to another country. And everything that's transpired from the past 10 years till now, I don't even have, I have no idea what we're getting ourselves into, but I am grateful to be by your side as your mate, your husband, the co-director of Venus Rising. And wherever we go into the unknown, I'm looking forward to bringing our medicine to there.
What a beautiful affirmation there, Nicholas. And, it takes a lot of courage for people, just speaking to our audience here, it takes a lot of courage to be your own unique, if you will, soul on this planet. And, we are all brothers and sisters. We're all related. As the saying goes, Amatakwiyase, we are all related. We are all brothers and sisters. We are all kindred to one another. And yet at the same time, it takes a lot more than prayers that we say and ceremonies that we do. Those are all in preparation for making the changes, for chopping wood and carrying water. Those are the preparations, like when Brad was sending you out on the land and you're like, oh, okay, here I gotta again dig holes again. All of that is to begin at the root chakra, and that's where you had to begin, and that's where I've begun in my life, is that we're not, when we're Aquarian shamans, we're not airy-fairy. We love fairies, but we're not airy-fairy. We're very grounded individuals. We take who we are very seriously. We do our best to cause no harm to each other, to ourselves, or to others. And one of the biggest, I think, probably challenges for everyone, not just people that are calling themselves Aquarian shamans, but for people who have visions to actually believe in themselves, find the support they need in the world, whether it's Venus rising or, some spiritual center they go to, or a tree they talk to in the woods, or whatever. It's a difficult thing to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And especially when it's very different than what other people do. And I would
I'd say it's one of the greatest gifts that you and Brad gave to me, was to trust those awkward instincts that I have, because that's, how I operate. I can do some really strange things, but like you said, it just comes out of a knowing, and it seems to work. And I know that your mammy did that for you. And I think that is essential for us to operate in this world as Aquarian shamans, to believe in ourselves.
Thank you, Nikólaus. And one of the last things I want to say is that a lot of you who know me out there, if you watch, you know that my mother passed this year in June, right during one of our 2-week trainings. And so it was happening right in the middle of that. And so every day, Nikólaus and I were both going just right down the street to the assisted care, and we were spending hours and hours with my mom, and she was 94, and her mind was slipping, with dementia and some pain and stuff, but overall she was really grateful to be here. We had brought her up here from her home in Kentucky. She was able to stay in her home till she was 94. But my mother had the cutest crush on Nikólaus. She just absolutely loved him. And one day, and she wasn't real clear sometimes, but one day she looked at me shortly before she passed, and she looked me in the eyes and she said, "I'm so glad that you and Nikólaus have each other." And it brought tears to my eyes. And there was a way she saw you too, Nikólaus, and so did my dad.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for you in my life, and for all the wisdom that you bring to the world. From your journey and everything that you share so open-heartedly and honestly with all of our students, family, and friends. And I love you.
I love you, Starwolf. And here we go again, into the unknown. Another great journey.
Is there any other place? Any other way?
Only with you by my side.
Likewise. This is Starwolf, and you've been listening to the Experiential Aquarian Shaman broadcast. Transform yourself, transform the world. Join me every second and fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio to awaken your inner Aquarian shaman. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to my channel and connect with me on social media at Linda Starwolf. For more information about my offerings and trainings, visit shamanicbreathwork.org. Thank you for taking this special time to journey with me.